Hello, everybody. We'll get started at 11. Please feel free to join us, put your information or questions in the chat. I'll be taking care of those at the end. I did pin a link at the very top for you to grab your handouts. So feel free to do that as we wait, and we will see you in just a minute. So excited. All right, everybody, we've got 2 more minutes until we get started. Looking forward to answering all your questions and sharing all of my knowledge in the area of comparing job offers after graduation. Feel free to click on the link in the chat to grab your handout package. We will be going over some of those handouts today, and feel free to drop any questions that you have into the chat. I'll get to them at the end. Hi, everybody. We're going to start right at time at 11. So I am going to give you just a couple of little heads up. I am going to be switching some screens and things during our presentation today. So bear with me, as computers can be as charming as they can be. If you haven't grabbed your downloads yet, please feel free to click the link in the chat and grab those downloads because we will be using them today. Oh, actually. All right, everybody, welcome. It is time for us to talk about comparing job offers after graduation. So glad that you are all here with me and sharing in this journey of understanding what this world is about, because there's so many different types of jobs out there, so many different offerings, and it's really hard to know which thing is going to be best for you. So my goal today is to try and help us understand all of those components. So let's get going. For today's agenda, we're going to go over an introduction, some community mindset, some definitions about money, math, and some interview strategies. If you haven't already done so, head over to the website link in the chat and grab your downloads for today. We're going to be going over some of these during our meeting. Feel free to put questions in the chat. I will be looking over them at the end and answer what I can with the time that we have. And when you grab the downloads, if you allow me to send you occasional messages, I will be sending out the FAQ from today and everything that comes from the chat today after the webinar. If you don't allow me to send you those, you won't get it, or any other emails about the work that we do. Today's training workshop thing that we're doing does not qualify for any CEs. This is purely for informational purposes only. All right, so who am I? Well, my name is Dr. Tara Sanderson. I have a doctorate in psychology, a master's in business administration, and I am a certified geek therapist. I've been the owner of my private practice for over 9 years and an approved supervisor here in Oregon for all of the folks that you see here. I'm also a cross-stitcher, geocacher, motorcycle rider, and all-around nerd. A couple of quick disclosures. As a group practice owner, I often hire people to work at my practice, but this training is not a solicitation to have you work for me. This is an opportunity for you to learn about what questions to ask and what things to think about on your journey toward employment. Your values may not match mine, and somewhere else may actually just be a better fit. And I want to encourage you to find the best fit for you. Also, as an entrepreneur, I want to disclose that I have several other products for sale on my website, drtarasanderson.co and drsandersonassociates.com. And although it is super cool if you want to buy stuff from me, this is not a training to get you to buy stuff from me. Everything I do today is really just for your own education. I'm also one of the founding members of the Oregon Mental Health Group Practice Owners Association. This is not an Oregon Mental Health Group Practice Owners Association sponsored event, but I do want to advocate that everyone get to know this cool association because it is part of my foundational values for why I'm doing this training. And we'll see that in the next slide. Also, there is a job fair sponsored by the Oregon Mental Health Group Practice Owners Association that I will put a save the date out for at the end of our presentation today. My goal today is to educate you so that you can make the best decision for you as you go out into this wacky world post-graduation. So the community mindset that we are starting with today is that I am one of hundreds of group practice owners here in Oregon. I believe in collaboration and not competition, which is how the Oregon Group Practice Owners Association was founded. We believed that we could do better together than we could ever do individually, trying to figure out how to get all of the people to us. None of us want to hoard all of the right people. We just want the right people for us. And we want other people who want the right people for them with them. Every single practice here in Oregon has its pros and its cons. And the key to success for you is to find the right fit for you. We want you to come at this job hunt, not in desperation, but in discernment. So I'm not here today to say what's right or wrong, ethical or unethical. Most of our industry in everything that we do as clinicians is really built on your education, understanding, and ability to defend the decisions you make by your understanding of the ethics, rules, and laws. My training today is just to give you more education so you can make the best decision that works for you. You may run into a practice that does something differently than what I said in this training was appropriate. Know that they have to make their own decisions based on their own interpretations of rules, ethics, and laws, and they and their lawyers will work it out. You get to decide what's best for you based on what works for you and what you're willing to stand behind and defend and do. Which leads us into this next conversation. Your job search begins with your values. Okay, so we're going to pause for literally a minute, and I'm going to have you write down your top 3 non-negotiables about the job that you're looking for and think about what themes are there. Now, I wrote down 4 types of things that might show up for you. So it might be in the category of values, priorities, or population. So if you are somebody who really loves working with kids, my practice is not the best fit for you. We do teens and up. I don't really work with the littles, and we don't have anybody in our practice that works with the littles, and that's not really the area that I want to start specializing in. So if you came to my practice and said, I'm really excited about working with 5 to 8-year-olds, I'd say, I know 4 practices who would love to have you, but it's not here. No matter if everything else about my practice was awesome for you, we're never going to meet your need for the population that you seek. It may be a culture or an environment thing. Maybe you're somebody who really values taking lunch breaks and chitter chattering in the break room, right? If you're working at a practice that really doesn't have a space for that, that might be problematic for you to get what you need out of that job, right? Or maybe you're somebody who really values the after hour kind of conversations. But if everybody is telehealth and only has a lot of community during the time that you're at work, that's not really going to work for you either. So if community is part of your culture or environment part of it, you need to really know that and ask questions about community as we get into those interviews. Maybe money is the biggest thing for you. Maybe those student loans are looming and you really want to go to a place that is going to pay you enough to pay those off quickly. Great. You're going to be looking for more of the high paid jobs than the lower paid ones because that money is the most important thing. There's no shame in that. You do what works for you. The last element inside of that piece of it for like pay structure or those types of things might even be like maybe student loan forgiveness. Maybe working at a place that offers student loan forgiveness is what you need, and you're willing to work for them for cheaper or more hours or different things because that's what's going to work for you best right now. That's totally fine. Maybe it's in the area of benefits. Maybe you need medical benefits and you want your employer to pay for those benefits. Great. Find employers that offer that. But you need to know that coming in, because if you're just looking at one thing and not the whole picture, and whatever you're looking at doesn't coincide with your values, it's just going to get to be a hot mess. You're going to hate being there. Things aren't going to work right. You're going to want to move. And then you're jumping job to job. And that's no fun for you. And that's no fun for your clients. We really want to make good, intentional, deliberate decisions as we are getting ready to do that. So I'm going to start a timer for literally 1 minute. It's going to feel uncomfortable sitting here watching me for 1 minute, knowing that your job is just to write down your values, because it may not even take you a minute because you may know them. But I'm going to start a timer in 5 seconds because I have a clock, and you're going to get started writing your values now. All right, we've got 30 seconds left. Keep going on those values. Know lots of things that really matter to you and put them down. You can do 3, you can do 10, but really think about what matters to you. 10 seconds. Wrapping it up. 3, 2, 1. See, 1 minute was not so hard. We made it. All right. So now that you have your values, we can start. You can hold this off to the side and know that as we talk about the next things, all of the definitions that we're going to go through, all of the pay structures that we're going to go through, we're going to compare all of those things that we're going to talk about to those values, and make sure that you really understand how to do the math to understand what those things work like for you as you're looking at these job offers. Because again, no two job offers is going to be the same. So let's talk some definitions. The first definition we're going to go through is what's an independent contractor, IC, or 1099. You could see any of those three things as you are kind of working through job applications and whatever it is. So you'll see a ton of different of these out there. So an independent contractor, according to the federal government, is a self-employed individual or a hired entity hired to perform a specific service for a client rather than being a regular employee. So if we put this into construction terms, if a company that's hiring you is the general contractor, you're the electrician or the plumber or whatever, the drywaller. Like there's all sorts of things. Think about anytime you hired someone to do a task for you, you're technically hiring an independent contractor because they're not your employee, right? If I hired a chef for my home and I was using him regularly, and I controlled what he cooked, I controlled all of the things, and he had a regular schedule with me, I would be hiring an employee. This is not a goal in my life, by the way, but because my husband's a great cook. But if I did that, it would be a employee. But if I hired someone to come in and throw a party for me, and they worked with me on the menu and we worked with all the things, and we said, great, we're agreeing on this contract that they come in and do this one activity for me, that's me hiring a contractor, right? So when you hire the general contractor, they are an independent contractor and they can subcontract to work with other people, right? So they hire an electrician to come in and do that work. They hire the drywaller to come in and do that work. The caterer may hire servers to come in and do that work, right? I don't hire each one of those people independently. I hire one person and they do all of the things. So just in case you're curious, all group practices are independent contractors to the insurance companies. The insurance company says, we're hiring Dr. Sanderson and Associates as an independent contractor to do therapy for our clients. I then, as Dr. Sanderson and Associates, say, great, I'm going to subcontract out that work to the clinicians that do the work for me. So I'm going to hire these people. I'm not subcontracting. I'm hiring these people to do the work so that we meet the need that the insurance company has offered for us. We may not be able to subcontract our contract to independent contractors, depending on the contract you have with your insurance company. I think I said contract 12 times in that sentence. Sorry about that. So let's talk about this. So as an independent contractor, you are the business owner for your business, and your business is being hired by another business to do a job. Okay. With that, that means you pay 100% of your taxes, which the general math is 15.3, and that's your FICA, your SUDA, all of the different pieces, right? Your benefits, you typically have no benefits from that company. And by typically, I mean you don't have any benefits by that company. Your benefits are things you would set up for yourself. Control, you have all of it. You set your own schedule, you set your own fees, you decide what software you're going to use, you decide all of those things. And costs, you pay for all the EHR, the liability, the marketing, any type of thing that you do, you pay for it out of the money that you bring in, because you're the business owner. You make a deal with this company for them to pay you this money, and you use that money to run your business. Does that make sense? So that's an independent contractor. Let's go to a W-2 employee. So a regular employee, a W-2 employee, is a traditional model of employee. So if you've ever had a W-2 job before, you fill out that W-4 form at the beginning of the year. Every year at the end of the year, they hand you these lovely W-2s that say this is how much you got paid this year, and this is how much you paid into taxes. And then you take that to, H&R Block or TurboTax or your accountant and say, how much do I owe them? And you pray that it's a refund, right? Like, this is your typical W-2 employee situation. This is pretty much everybody, right? That's not an independent contractor. So for taxes, your employer pays half of them. So when you look at your monthly pay stub and it says, this is how many hours that you worked and this is the total amount of money that you made, your gross, and then they have that little box for all the deductions. And some of those deductions are taxes. That's where your 7% is coming out of, and you'll see that the other 7% they paid right for you. They only took 7, even though we technically owe 15. Excuse me. For benefits, you might have things like health benefits, PTO, or retirement, paid leave, disability services, all sorts of things. Supports that are offered, the employer pays for marketing, rent, admin building, your equipment, all the different pieces. But there's a trade-off, right? You get less autonomy, but more security. With W-2 employees, you get a paycheck regularly. With an independent contractor, you have to submit an invoice. With a W-2 employee, you have access to wage and hour laws, paid leave organ, workers' compensation if you get injured. As an independent contractor, you don't have access to those things. You work as much as you need to work to get the job done, right? There's no overtime for you as an independent contractor. So they are very different positions and very different ways of looking at those positions. And it's so important for you to understand which one really works for you. So if you go back to your values and look at the things that you wanted, if something like having a real stable work environment is what you're looking for, maybe a W-2 employee is better, right? If having 100% independence, you want to be able to see one client one week and 27 clients the next week, then maybe an independent contractor position is better for you. Just kind of depends. Now, I'm going to pause here and say one more thing. A lot of you might be thinking to yourselves, wait a second, what about running my own company? Is that an independent contractor position? Ish, right? Running your own business where you're not getting a paycheck from anybody else. You're not submitting invoices to anybody else. You don't have a contract to work with anybody else. You're just doing your own thing, your private pay, maybe here in Oregon, and you're not going to work with any of the insurances and you're not going to work with a group practice. You're just doing your own thing. Technically, you are just a self-employed person. You are just a business here in Oregon. You are not an independent contractor because you're not making arrangements with anybody else. That's a whole different thing than being an independent contractor. And it's really important to know that in order to be an independent contractor, you have to be your own business owner and you have to have a business set up to do that. But if you just are doing that and not trying to pursue anything else, you don't have to be, you're not an independent contractor, you're just a business. Does that make sense? So I guess technically there's 3 things, but today I'm focusing on the 2 job offer pieces, independent contractor versus W-2. If you want to talk to me about running your own business, please feel free to reach out. Happy to talk about it. All right. So now we've got these 2 pieces, but I want to throw one more wrench into our mix here. Critical warning, the supervision loophole. Now, I'm not going to go too far into it, but the federal government sets the guidelines for who can be a 1099 employee. Each state then gets to make their own rules underneath of that, as long as they don't do less than what the federal government says. Okay. Some states make it really clear. California, Illinois, New York, Ohio, Oklahoma are some states that are very clear that people who require supervision cannot be independent contractors. Okay. Some states are more ambiguous than others. I will say that in my research, most states across the board have come down on the area of associates in the same way. If they cannot do things independently, which is the first tenet of the federal guideline for 1099, they can't be an independent contractor. Now, Oregon's Bureau of Labor Industries has defined what a 1099 contractor can be for us. There's a test that employers have to do to make sure that somebody qualifies for being a 1099 contractor versus an employer or employee. Employment lawyers around the area all agree that if you require supervision, you cannot be an independent contractor. And there are some practices here in Oregon that will still gamble and classify associates this way. I am not judging that. Just educate yourself on whether or not this works for you to be an independent contractor working with them in a way that maybe has some ramifications, right? The misclassification piece, which is the biggest ramification, this big black box down at the bottom, the misclassification piece, does that really impact you as the 1099 employee? Not really. You're the one paying all the taxes. The government is fine with you paying all the taxes. They're getting all the taxes. But if someone were to complain that you were misclassified, the company would get a fine. They would get a bill for those taxes, and you might get a refund. You also might be able to get back pay if you worked overtime because the employee rules would apply rather than the independent contractor rules. So you want to take a look at whether or not that's a place that you want to be, is in a position to have to navigate all of those kind of disruptions in your world as an independent contractor. The other piece that I would say, and maybe this is just a little bit of me on a little bit of a soapbox, the folks who went before us to help us determine what is a work week, how many hours is too many hours to go without a break, what's minimum wage. They also advocated that if the employer has control, they should be paying 50% of your taxes because they're making profit from your work. And if the employer has no control and it's all on you, then technically you're the employer and you should pay all your taxes. So I feel like honoring a little bit of the people who went before us to say like, hey, thanks for advocating for the employees, for caring for the employees, for making sure that everybody is cared for. And let's put the risk and the taxes and the things on where it should be in that piece of it. So the big question is, how do you know if you're being offered an independent contractor position or a W-2 position? Well, my first recommendation would be ask specifically. You can literally say, is this a 1099 employment relationship or a W-2 employment relationship? Or if you want to ask it a little different, you could say, will I be getting regular paychecks and be on payroll? Or will I be submitting invoices? I'm going to caveat here to say there are some companies out there that will have you be a 1099 independent contractor, but not have you submit invoices. And they'll just say, we'll pay you when we get paid and you'll just be fine. Be a little leery of those ones, I'm going to say, because you'll want to make sure that you know exactly what you've gotten paid for, that your books will match exactly what work you did to what you paid for. And realistically, you should be submitting invoices to get paid. Could you imagine if you hired somebody to create a deck in your backyard and you just looked at them and said, you know what, I'll pay you when I pay you? What contractor is going to sign yes to that plan, right? Nobody. They're going to be like, I require 50% up front. You're going to pay me this when the job's complete, because that's kind of how it works, right? Nobody just kind of says like, yeah, I'll just take payment whenever you feel like it, right? Or whenever the next thing becomes available. So really important to understand that difference. Then the last question that you could ask might be, will I be required to bring my own software, pay my own taxes, track my own sessions for compensation? Like, what's my responsibility in this relationship? Another caveat for W-2 versus independent contractor. With independent contractor, you are required to kind of pay for all of your own stuff because those are all business expenses for you. Any job that is offering you stuff in exchange for independent contractor work may look like they're giving you like these perks to being an independent contractor working with them, like, oh, you'll be on our website, or you can use our EHR. And what they mean is we want you to use our EHR and you have to use our EHR. Anytime that you have to do something for an independent contractor position, that's blurring the line of being an employee. So be aware of that kind of relationship. And then lastly, the other way that you can know which way that you are being offered this position, well, I guess I already said it was you can just ask, like, is this a 1099 or is this a W-2? Because if it's a 1099 and you don't want to be running your own business, that's not the job for you. If it is a W-2 and you want to be running your own business, that may not be the job for you. You need to clarify whether or not you can run your own business on the side of the job offering they're giving you. So that's another avenue to think about as you're comparing those values and doing those pieces. Okay, now that we know the difference between employment statuses, 1099 and W-2, that's what we're building our foundation on. You've compared that to your values. Which way do I want to land? Do I want more independence? Do I want more structure? Do I want them to pay more for my stuff? Do I want to pay more of my stuff? All of those pieces. Do I even qualify? All of that is the stuff that you're comparing back to your values. Now we're going to talk about pay types. There are 4 pretty typical pay types here in Oregon. So when you're comparing offers, you need to understand the structure of how and when you get paid. So let's talk about these individually. The split commission model is a percentage of the session fee. So for 1099 employees, this is usually about 60 to 70% of what the company receives. For our W-2 employees, it's usually 50 to 65%. Because the more benefits you get, the lower the percentage, because they're spending some of that extra money on the benefits that may be important to you. Because remember, this isn't about just money take home. This is about money going to the values that you want. If you are willing to pay for your own medical insurance, you don't need to go to a place that's paying for medical insurance. You could just take more money and that money would go to your medical insurance, right? If that's how you want to do it. If you're somebody who really wants medical insurance, taking less money in your paycheck every month because they are paying for medical insurance in that way works better, right? And makes it more effective for you to live the life that you want with the values that you have. I want you to really hear this key. It all comes back to the values, right? It all comes back to what really is important to you as you're comparing these offers. Okay. So for that split commission, typically those are the ranges. And with split commission, you often get paid when the insurance company pays the company that you're working for. This is kind of that weird part. So you may get like a minimum wage kind of situation for the hours worked. And then the split commission on top of that once the company gets paid. You may be in a relationship as a 1099 contractor that says, you get paid when we get paid. And as long as everything goes through, that works for a 1099. Usually with W-2, you get some sort of nominal rate for the work that you did, and then you get paid commission or whatever based on the rate of service that got paid from there. So sometimes that can be a really great deal for people. They make a lot of good money. The risk in that, though, is that maybe sometimes insurance takes a long time to pay. So some insurances are great and pay pretty quickly, every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks, whatever. Some insurances say, oh, actually for that session, we need to look, and it'll be 6, 12 weeks later before a paycheck comes in. So if you're somebody who needs stability in your income, then having the random schedule of when you get paid, what you get paid may not work for you, right? If you're somebody who doesn't mind a little instability to be able to get that higher 65% of the commission, then go for it. Like that works for you because maybe another value is being met by working there, right? So you get to decide what works for you in those pieces. The next level is hourly. So this is typically just paid for hours worked. This is a W-2 only. You cannot be a 1099 and get hourly pay. It should be roughly 50% of the average session rate, including taxes and benefits. And you do always want to ask, is the admin rate different from the clinical rate? So W-2 hourly and W-2 salary need to be paid at regular intervals, regardless of when insurance paid. All of the risk of bringing the money in from those insurance companies is relying on the company at that point, because they're putting out money before they may even get paid, right? So that's where a lot of people end up seeing in small businesses like a cash flow problem is when they've put out money without money coming in yet, right? So you have to have that company needs to have a good billing department that is bringing in the money regularly so that there's not a cash flow issue. Um, Whereas with split commission, obviously they don't have as much risk because they don't have to put money out until the money comes in, right? So for hourly people, you're getting paid for hours worked, which means you also are needing to navigate the wage and hour laws. You need to take breaks appropriately. You need to take your lunches appropriately. So there may be a little more control over your schedule from your employer. For salary employees, it's usually a fixed amount per month. You're not having that ebb and flow of I had a lot of sessions, I didn't have a lot of sessions each month. It is a W-2 only, again, position because it's an employee-employer relationship. There's typically an expectation of a specific client volume that must be met in order to stay in that salary position. And again, it's paid at regular intervals. The risk is again on the employer because they're paying you out no matter how many sessions you do. It's on them to make sure that you do the right amount of sessions to make sure that you are up on those pieces so that the money that they're bringing in covers your salary, right? In these positions, typically salary gets a bad rap because they say it's a 40-hour-a-week position, but actually they expect 52 hours from you or whatever. In our industry, it's a little weird. So it would be like that if they were expecting 38 sessions per week. And then you also had all of your note writing time and everything on top of that. Yeah, you would go over 40 every week. But I don't see that a lot in our industry. Most of our industry does about 20 to 25, maybe 28 sessions a week outside of things like community mental health or other companies. I mean, they may do more than that or whatever. But as a salary person, there are some rules about salary of who can be salary and how those pieces work. And typically, a piece of that is that the employer needs to monitor how many hours you work to make sure you're not going over the overtime laws. But we're not supposed to really be nitpicky, Carrie, about did you hit an appropriate 32 this week or whatever. Outside of the money generating ones, we can be picky about that. So being a salary employee definitely has some perks to you of a little less chaos in your financial schedule, a little more structure in the how many hours you're supposed to work, and all the risk is on the employer. But if you're somebody who, barely toes the line and doesn't really do some of those pieces, I would imagine that most employers will end up kicking you out of salary pretty quickly because you need to be able to get those 30 hours a week or whatever it is per session. And then the last one is fee for service. This is usually only a 1099 employee, and you're paid only when the service is performed. So typically there's no pay for cancellations. It doesn't include any other type of time. So some employers will say that they will pay you a high rate for your service performance. So let's say 70% or 80% of the session fee, but it's only for what you're doing in that service. So anything that you do outside of that, you don't get paid. So like if you had to do phone calls to doctors or you had to write a WPATH letter or you had to do something like that, there's no payment for that because everything was covered in that service and in that high rate that they gave you in that. Typically that and also ends up getting paid when the insurance company pays you. Or if you're not doing an insurance thing, you get paid, on a decent schedule for that. So now that we have employment status, which is 1099 and W-2, and we have these kinds of pay types, it is time to do the math. So we're going to look at an offer and see which offer is better in our experience today. So offer A, 1099 employee, 1099 independent contractor, 93,600. It's a 60% split that they are giving you. Offer B is a W-2 employee at 76,200, which is a salary position. On paper, this looks like a no-brainer. There's a $17,000 difference. For a new graduate with student loans, offer A might look like a winner, but that may not be the case. And this is where it comes down to your values, what you want, how it works for you, right? So these numbers aren't apples to apples. This is not just money, right? This is revenue versus salary. And so I'm going to show you how we do the math to be able to truly compare these offers. First of all, let's look at the money you're generating. This is what's called revenue, right? Another word you might hear is gross income. In this example, you're seeing 25 clients a week. The average rate of reimbursement from insurance is $130 per session. And if you work 48 weeks a year, so that's 4 weeks vacation, 48 weeks a year, that will generate $156,000 in total revenue for the practice. This is all the money that's coming in from those sessions. This is the company's gross income. Now, your slice of that, they offer 60% as a 1099. So your split, what they are giving you out of their 156,000 is 60%, so 93,600. For offer B, the W-2 employee, their split is around 49% so it becomes 76,200. So why would anybody take the lower number? This is the next step, right? So remember, this is math class we're doing right now. So we've just found out the offers. We've now created the revenue assumptions, how much money is coming in, and what's the split look like. So now we have to start subtracting. So the first thing we're going to subtract is our taxes and our benefits. So in offer A, 1099, we have to first subtract the taxes. So as a W-2 employee, your employer pays half of your FICA taxes, Social Security, Medicare, all of that. But as a 1099 contractor, you are the business owner. So you pay all 15% yourself. So you have to pay the employer portion that the practice would have paid for you on an income of $93,000, which is roughly $7,000 straight out of your pocket that the employee receives a bill for, plus your own $7,000, which comes out to a whopping $14,320. So remember when I said there was a $17,000 difference? We are way over halfway there, right? Now we have to think about keeping you alive and healthy. In our W-2 offer, the employer contributes to health insurance, retirement, and maybe even student loan support out of that percentage of the whole amount that's coming in, right? So they're taking, here's 156,000 that comes in. We're going to take out 7,000 to pay for your taxes. We're going to take out 7,400 to pay for your student loans, health insurance, all of the things, right? So $7,400 there. And then out of that, we're going to do 49%, right? Like we're going to give you some more money, right? If you're a 1099 contractor, who pays for your health insurance? You do, right? Who pays for your retirement? You do, right? Who pays for you when you have the flu and want to take a vacation? Well, honestly, no one, unless you put money away to pay yourself during that time, which means you're just taking money from other sessions to put towards that, right? As a 1099, if you don't sit in that chair, you don't get paid because there is no PTO bucket unless you make one. But again, that's still coming out of your money, right? So to match the W-2 lifestyle, we're going to take out another $7,400 out of that $93K. So now this slide's total for taxes and benefits is $21,720 versus our W-2 employee, who is $7,160 because that's the taxes that they're going to end up paying. Whew, that 21,000, that's a big number, right? But there's more. But wait, there's more. We have to subtract our business costs. So as a 1099, remember, you are a small business. So you're going to need your malpractice insurance. You're going to pay for your marketing. You're going to pay for your electronic health record system. This is your monthly expenses. And if you're pre-licensed, you might also have to pay for supervision, which can cost thousands per year. This number that I put in here, $5,400, was built off of $150 per hour for 3 times a month supervision for 12 months. Now, of course, there's ways to decrease that. There are people who do it for less than 150. There are some of our graduates who will need less supervision a month. Maybe you'll need less supervision a month, but you'll need it for 24 months, or who knows, right? All sorts of things. This isn't even close to what you would need for a psychologist resident. So a psychologist resident would need 150 per hour times 8 times a month because they have to go twice a week for a year. And I'm not even going to do that math right now, but it's a big number, right? That might also be able to cost you for that. So I'm going to add in $2,000 for liability insurance, $5,000 for EHR marketing equipment. And remember, this is a full year of money, right? This is not monthly. This is a full year of money. And then supervision, you're $5,400. So this is an additional $1,220 $12,400. And these are sometimes considered the hidden costs of being a 1099 because you don't think about them affecting the salary that you're looking at, affecting the money that you're looking at, but that's where it's coming from. As a W-2 employee, your employer pays for your liability insurance, your employer pays for your EHR marketing, your employer pays for supervision most of the time, right? And this is where comparing the job offers is important, and asking these questions are important. Asking your potential employer, do you pay for my liability insurance? Example from my practice, I tell people, yes, I pay for your liability insurance, and I am going to recommend that you also get your own, because my liability insurance is going to try and cover my company first and foremost. Will be secondary to what they care about. But your liability insurance that you pay for will want to cover you and doesn't care about my company, right? So being dual covered is really, really helpful, and it's not necessary. I just think it's really kind of important to have that in your own basket, because then if you ever leave companies, you're able to say like, I'm taking my own malpractice insurance with me, and you're covered through the whole part of your career, which, by the way, you're going to need malpractice insurance forever. So find a company that's really good and that you like a lot, because you'll be taking them with you for the long haul. Changing malpractice insurance companies is hard, and can be very a little chaotic and not so much fun. So find a good one, stay with it. If you want recommendations of those some good ones out there, please feel free to shoot me a message. I'm happy to give you some of those names. Okay, so now we've got 12,400 from this one, and we had 21,000 from the other one. So the final verdict here, after you pay your taxes, buy your own health insurance, pay for your own overhead, that massive $94,000 has shrunk down to about 59. You're doing the same amount of work, but in the 1099 model, you're taking on 100% of the risk. So if a client cancels, you lose money. If the insurance claws back money, you owe money. If you get sick, you lose income. And it's so important to track these details. I was chatting with someone the other day who was telling me that they run their own practice, and they were telling me that they were really, really sick, and they were, trying to take a bunch of cold medicine and just make it through work. And I said, well, do you have money to be able to take the day off? And they were like, I don't think I do. And I said, well, let's look at your numbers. Let's take a look at your utilization. So we went through and looked at how many sessions she had done this month compared to the budget of what she needs to do each month. And we found out that she had 8 more sessions already done this month than she needed, even though she was planning on taking some time off for the holiday, and she was planning on some other things, like doing the math. She had 8 sessions worth of excess. And I said, well, that looks like 8 hours of PTO. Like you can use that time to cover for today so that you can rest and do the rest of your month the way you need to. Now, if you're thinking you might want an extra day after the holiday, then maybe don't take as much time today. You could take 4 hours today and have 4 hours left in the bank. But like, you can do the math to cover yourself for making sure that you have time to get well and navigate sickness and have vacation and stuff if you plan. And looking at those numbers regularly is so important. One of the biggest things that I think we get knocked on as business owners is all of the data and all the stats that you need. And for me, I think it's one of the most important things is teaching people to track their stats, teaching people the importance of their stats, because it's things like that where you could wake up one morning, be just a mess, and say to yourself, let me look at my numbers. And if I have the right numbers, I'm going to cancel today because I need a rest. Because when we keep pushing through, that's where burnout happens. And we don't want burnout. No, we have to avoid this at all costs. So we have to do things to understand. So when people complain about bosses saying things like, your utilization is low, or you're not meeting your productivity numbers or whatever, I would encourage you all to really take a moment to think about, what are we saying in that? We're saying that time and that energy and that money needs to be put into a place where we can create a little like buffer for ourselves, and that how much of a buffer you have in those ways, especially if you're in private practice, but also in any job. Like, as people are asking you to be accountable to how many sessions you said you were going to do, or any of those pieces, just know that like really what they're asking for is like, we built the budget off of these numbers, and in order for us to pay you, you have to do the numbers, right? And that's a skill that goes way beyond just working at this one job and getting this job after graduation. That goes on to if you decide to do private practice someday yourself. Okay. So, real key thing here is don't look at the split percentage or just the total amount at the end. You have to look at the total compensation. And often a 50% W-2 split is typically more money per hour than a 70% contract split when you take into account all of those other hidden costs or all of those other costs of being a business owner. The independent contractor might have more independence. And if that's your value, there are ways to do that, right? The W-2 employee might have more stability and honestly less anxiety about some of the other aspects of running a business if that's your value. But you're the person who has to take all of this information and funnel it through your values to determine what it is that you want to do next with the information that you're getting. So, what is total compensation? This is a sheet that I would absolutely love for you to fill out after every single interview. Take the time to look at the compensation, ask the questions that are on the compensation, do the math that's on the compensation. So, what is total compensation? Well, in basic terms, it's assigning a money value to things that aren't sessions. So, supervision, right? That's not an income generator. That's not bringing the company more money. It's a cost to the company, but it's a benefit to you if you don't have to pay for it, right? The admin support, billing, scheduling, etc. That's a benefit to you if you don't have to pay for it. Training and CEs, student loan support, healthcare, retirement, PTO, sick time, more, right? There's all sorts of things. We are looking at the stuff that doesn't show up in our bank account at the end of the month, that is a value add or a possible not subtraction if you're not the business owner. All of these things on the right are things that an independent contractor would have to figure out and set up for themselves, but come as the benefit of being an employee. So let's take a look at our handout. If you haven't had a chance to download it yet, you can do that now. Feel free to go to the link that's in the chat, drtarasanderson.co/comparing job offers. I'm going to show my screen here and share this tab instead so that we can walk through this together. And let's see here. Yeah. Am I sharing that one? I am. Look at me go. Look at technology. It's fabulous. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. Perfect. Okay, so in this worksheet that we were talking about today, it's a handout for you to be able to print and use as many times as you want, take care of it. Obviously, this is something that I made. Please don't reproduce it and send it to anybody else or do anything with it. Like it is, if somebody wants it, it's for free on my website. Please send them over to me to get it. Okay, so the handout today is going over the total compensation worksheet. So this is for us to be able to compare two offers or to evaluate a single offer in depth. So our goal is to come up with the total compensation value or the true take-home pay after all of the hidden costs or added benefits are put in. So for part A, we're just going to write in some of the offer details. What company was this with? What type of employment was it? What's the pay structure for it? How many clients a week am I supposed to do? Honestly, I might even add in here, what's the admin responsibilities in here? Are there any other responsibilities in here? And then you want to look at what their base annual income is. What is it that they say they're going to give you? Now, if this is an hourly pay situation, they may not give you a total amount. They may just give you it's $42 an hour or whatever it is. If you have that, you can do your own math down here to say the hourly pay is $42 an hour times 4 clients a week plus however many admin hours. And if those admin hours are at a different rate, you'll need to adjust the formula a little bit, but then times the number of weeks per year that you're going to be working, 48, and that will give you your base annual income. So you're going to come up with these things. So this is kind of the base numbers of what's happening. But then you're going to look at these parts. So this is your hidden pay for your W-2 additions. So if this is a W-2 offer, you want to be adding some of these estimated annual values into this worksheet as well. So if your employer is paying the 7.65% of your salary, that's an annual value add. So you're going to multiply 7.65 times this base annual salary, and then you're going to end up with your annual value here. If they're offering medical insurance, you want to find out at what percentage is it covered. Right now, my company is offering it at 80%. It is my goal to get to 100% because I would love 100% of my insurance covered if I was an employee. So I am desperate to get there as my company grows. But mine is covered at 80%. So you're going to multiply the monthly premium by 12 to get that amount. And then you would multiply it again by whatever percentage. If it was 100%, you could just put that over here. If it was 80%, you would multiply it by that 80% and put that number over here. Do they offer a 401k match? So then you would do the math on your 401k match. So if they say, yes, we match up to 3% of what you contribute, or we match 3% of your salary, all of those things have value. So you'll want to know how much that 401k match is, or whatever their matching program is. Do the math and add that here. Their paid time off, how many weeks of paid time off do they give you, or days if they do it in days or hours? The value of that equals weekly pay times weeks off. And again, if you're doing hourly, you'll want to find out if it's 50 hours that they offer you, that's 50 hours at your rate of pay, and that's what you're going to put over here. Supervision, is it internal or free? Market value is about $150 an hour times 50 weeks. You would be able to put that math in here, or you can update that formula to your specific supervision situation. And that's a value add, right? Admin and billing, the value of that is roughly 7 to 10% of the revenue that you're bringing in. So the way that you figure out the revenue back on that other slide, right, is how much the average is per session times the number of clients you're seeing per week. And then you get that Avanel at that total number. And then you're going to multiply that by 7 to 10% of the revenue. And that number is going to go in here as a value add. Is there a stipend for professional development, or do they pay for those? So my practice, we try and do all of the CEs as much as we can in-house. So my company buys a lot of CEs that we watch together as a team, or that people have access to as a team. So although I don't have a stipend that I give to folks, I do offer literally all the CEs that you would need every year. So at $50 a pop for 20 CEs a year, it's a pretty good chunk of change that you would put into here as that formula. Some companies do offer a stipend. They may say $3,000 a year, and that would be what you would put in here for that part of the formula. Lastly, liability insurance. Do they pay your malpractice insurance? If so, you can figure out kind of the market rate for that by just doing an estimate on any of the insurance websites and putting that in here. And that is another value add. So then you're going to total up that whole column into what your estimated hidden value is, right? If you're comparing that with with a 1099 contractor position, you're going to do this a little differently. So in this one, you're going to subtract these costs from your base pay from that company. So our base pay, again, is on that first sheet. So this is your base annual income. And then we're going to subtract down here on page 4, the hidden costs. So what's your self-employment tax? You're going to pay the extra 7.65% and put that in here. You are going to take a look at the average marketplace plan, or maybe you already know this for yourself because you're already on the marketplace. What are you paying for that piece of it? Unpaid time off. How much time off are you going to take per year? How much time are you going to put in your bucket for that year? If you have to hire an external supervisor, what's the cost of that? And then what's the cost of running your business, right? Your EHR fees, your liability insurance, your marketing, all of those pieces. What are the costs of that per year? And then you're going to create that down here. Last page, part D, is going to be your final calculation. You're going to take that base salary plus the hidden value and show your total compensation. And then the 1099, you're going to do your base revenue, income, right? Minus the hidden costs and your real take-home pay, right? And that's what you're going to compare, right? Because this kind of levels things out where it's going to be, I'm going to go Gala Apple versus Brayburn, right? It's not fully perfect apples to apples, but it's close, right? It's as close as you're going to be able to get comparing all of the things that are included in that package that looks like the lower price compared to the package that looks like the higher price, and getting it down to the right space. When I think about this sometimes in terms of like it's quality versus quantity sometimes, like how many times do you want to rebuy shoes? The $20 pair seems like a great find, but if they're going to die in the next 2 weeks, they weren't really a great pair unless you just needed them for 2 weeks. And that was the value add, right? It was like, I just need these for 2 weeks. I just need to last until Sometimes that $20 pair is fine. Sometimes springing for the $50 pair means that it lasts for 2 years, and then you have something that's really worth it. I think looking at these calculations in the same way, it depends on your values and what it is that you want to do. So let's come back to our presentation and think a little bit about real benefits versus fake benefits, and how do you know the difference? And you'll see my giant "it depends" down at the bottom, because that is the truth. It really does depend on what it is that your values are. So when a ad says we provide the EHR and software, the first thing I would want you to think about is this should be a W-2 position, because they should be providing the EHR and software for a W-2. But then my next question would be, or my next statement would be, but why is that a value add then for this company? They should be providing that. That's a like generic requirement for what we're doing. So why are they putting it on there like that? Like what is it about that makes that interesting, right? Or makes that a benefit to someone? It's not really a benefit. It's a fake benefit for a W-2 employee. It's also a fake benefit for a 1099, because the 1099 person should not be forced to use a software that is not part of their business. Imagine a general contractor coming to your house and you saying, you cannot use any of your tools, you can only use my tools. That doesn't really work. The general contractor has like all the tools he needs. Why would he need to use your tools? Now, if you hire a handyman off of Craigslist, maybe he uses your tools because he's just coming over to like help you do a thing. But a general contractor that you are making this arrangement with is probably going to bring his own tools, and probably wouldn't agree to the contract if you said, I wanted you to just use my own tools, right? So we provide the EHR and software. That's a fake benefit. It's made to like try and add to the list of benefits. And that's, again, not shame on anybody who puts that out there. Maybe some people are really proud of their EHR software. Maybe they made it themselves and they just like love it. Or maybe it's a software that like really works with certain populations. Great. There's no reason not to put it on there. It's just not the thing that like as a 1099, you shouldn't be looking at that and being like, sweet, that's one thing less I have to pay. You should be looking at that and being like, that feels like control, right? Because as a 1099, you need to be in control of your business. We market for you. So as a W-2 employee, you're going to look at that in the same way as the EHR software. I think that's your job as a business owner, is to bring in the dollars so that I can do the work so that you get the money, right? Like this is how it works. But as an independent contractor, you might be thinking again, ooh, value add. I don't have to do my own marketing. Clients just come to me. But do I have control over those? So this is where an it depends comes in. Like if they assign you clients and you don't have control over who you take and don't take, that's more of an employee relationship than a contractor relationship. But if they funnel people to you and you can take who you like and don't take who you don't like and work the days you want and don't work the days you don't want, that's fine. Like then them marketing for you, not a big deal, I suppose. Like they have an excess of clients that they need to give to someone, and you're the someone that they're hiring to do that with. That's not a bad plan. Having a beautiful office space. Like, as a W-2 employee, I would be looking at that as like, ooh, added benefit. Like, because it is nice to have a place that somebody thinks is beautiful, right? Should they be providing an office space? Yes. In fact, one of the schools did a walkthrough the other day for making sure that we were, a good practice for students and whatever. And they said, I kind of told them that I was a little anxious about them coming, and like did the like deep clean, spruce clean, and was like, oh my gosh, what are they going to say about my office spaces? And they were like, Tara, we're just kind of making sure that our interns aren't in a closet. So the fact that you have like rooms and couches and like we're pretty happy. And I laugh so hard thinking about some of my own practicum experiences where I absolutely did therapy in a closet. Like I remember being in a school campus and my office was what used to be like kind of a junk storage room that they had converted to an office because now they had an intern. And like that was my space. So I was like, oh, I totally get it, right? The idea of having a beautiful office space to go to is an added value for sure. The space itself should be like normal business as usual, but having it be beautiful and something that you really enjoy is an added benefit. That is a nice piece. It's just not a real benefit. It's not a benefit to you in the like take home dollars. It is a benefit to you and like it is beautiful and you get to be there, right? As a as an independent contractor, though, having a beautiful office space that you can use but not required to could be a benefit to you if that means you don't have to pay for extra office space or whatever. They are fine with you using it. Maybe you just have to sign up on a calendar to use it whatever day. But if they say you have to do your work from here, that's kind of a no-go. And then the last one, 100% covered healthcare for eligible employees. An actual benefit, real benefit to W-2 employees. If they say that and you're a 1099 contractor and they're trying to give you 100% covered healthcare, they literally said employee. So that means you're changing your relationship with them, you're changing your role with them, and you should ask some more questions on whether or not you're an independent contractor or a W-2 employee. Okay, so we have figured out W-2 employees, we figured out 1099s, we figured out pay structure, we figured out pay timing, we have figured out the total compensation package, and we have figured out like how to determine real benefits versus fake benefits, whether the job offer is W-2 or independent contractor. We've figured out a lot. So we are going to take a 2-minute break so I can have a little drink, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about interview strategies and how to get at the tough questions that you are going to need to ask. So I'm going to put the front slide back on. We will come back in 2 minutes. You'll hear me say a little timer at 1 minute, and then I will come back at 2 minutes. All right, we're coming back in 1 minute. All right, welcome back, everybody. And we are now into part 2 of our training, and we're going to be talking about interviews. So let's get over here to our interview slide and let's get ourselves going. So, interview strategies. We are going to talk about 4 key rules to interviews. Most new grads walk into an interview thinking, oh my gosh, please hire me. I need hours. I want you to flip the script. You are looking for a partner, not just a paycheck, right? So here are the 4 rules to the interview process. Number 1, check your gut. Have your values written down in front of you when you're searching websites, when you're in the interview process, and when you're talking to other people about the jobs that you have been searching. Don't assume goodness. Don't assume goodness of fit. If you feel confused or pressured, that is data. Imagine that everything that's happening in the interview is data. So one of the things that I do in most of my interviews, and honestly, in most of my sessions with clients, is I always tell people that I'm kind of a late person. I am always like 1 or 2 minutes late to things, sometimes as many as 10 to 15 minutes late to things, depending on what else is taking my energy and my time in those places. So I try and tell people straight up front, hey, I'm a late person. If lateness is a deal breaker for you, I am not the person to work with or for. So if that's a deal breaker, know it up front. Let's deal with it right now because I will probably never be on time for you. And it's not about you, it's 100% about me and trying to do more things than I need to in each of the things that I'm doing. There's my train. So you need to know if it's a deal breaker for you, and you need to be able to have that conversation with people as you are doing those interview pieces. Everything that's going on is data. So if someone were to interpret me being late as data saying that they weren't important, this may not be the place for them, right? If they are able to know that and say, like, actually, it's not one of my values that she's late, that's fine, then that data becomes not as important, right? So you need to be aware of those pieces, right? The second key rule is ask your questions. We're going to go over several questions in the next few slides, but I want you to think about having them written down and taking time to write the answers to them when you're in the interview. It may feel awkward and pressured where you ask a question, they're giving the answer, you're writing it down, and then there's this awkward silence. It's okay. Let there be awkward silence. We're therapists. We have to deal with awkward silence all the time. It is okay for there to be awkward silence while you are doing that process, because it is important for people to know that you are taking good notes. I mean, as an employer, I love it when I see people taking notes. I'm like, oh, they are somebody who knows how they think and how they do things, right? Um, and as a person who is on the other side of that, as a person who is being interviewed for being hired, it's important for you to walk away and have all the information that you need in order to make your best decision. So write down your questions, write down your answers, and don't be afraid to have lots of questions that you do. My top tip for today would be to follow up after every interview that you do with one more question. See how they respond to it. See how quickly they respond to it. See where you are in the priority of them taking care of things and responding to things. I always do a thing back with my potential employees. If I tell people, like, I don't want to hear from you today on whether or not you want to move through the rest of the process or anything. I want you to sleep on it. I want you to email me on Monday. I want you to email me on Thursday. I give them a specific day that I want them to email me because I'm watching for, do they follow the direction? Because it's important to me that people follow directions and that they think about things and that they know what they're doing, right? And that they're being very intentional. So one of my values comes out in, I'm going to give you a task, even though you're not my employee, and see if you follow it. And I would recommend that you do the same thing to your potential employers. Follow up with them with an email that says, hey, thanks for meeting with me, blah, blah, blah. I did have one more question. And then give them that question and see how they respond. Take that data and figure out what do they do with it and see what comes next. The third key rule is take time to decide. Don't make a rush decision. If they are pressuring you, see if that fits your lifestyle before you say yes. If they offer you a job on the spot, say, I'm exploring my options and I need time to decide. It is really important that you do not accept a job out of fear while you are still looking. If you are still looking, be honest about that with the potential employer. It's fine for them to have to wait. And if they are in a spot where they're like, nope, I need to hire somebody today, literally know that whatever other candidate they've got today is going to get that position. And that's not something you want. You don't need to fight for that. The amount of work, I mean, just from a stepping out point, the amount of work that it takes to go through the process of hiring somebody just to have them say, actually, I found another spot, peace out, just sucks for a business owner. It's expensive for us. From the perspective of hiring a contractor to do your deck, right? You hire them, you put your 50% down, and then 2 weeks later, they're like, oh, actually, I booked another gig on the days that you're doing that. So I'm not going to be able to build it till like September. Is that okay? What? Or actually, I booked another gig, so I'm just not going to be able to build it at all. Like, peace out. That's a problem. It's a serious problem. So don't accept a job out of fear if you're still looking. You can't really like bank job offers in that way. Just ask for more time. And if they're not able to give it to you, take that as data and figure out what you want to do with that. Okay. And then the last one is verify. Don't just take their word for it. Ask to see the manual or the contract before you make a decision. See if you can see the space or meet the people or any other way that you can compare what they say in the interview to what they do in real life. And that's not because we're assuming that everybody's lying to us.
It's because we want to like really kind of get a feel for, is this the right place for me? Is this what's going to work for me in the way that I really want it to? Um, Sometimes people will feel like a company maybe has bait and switched them and said like, oh, you're only going to do 23 hours per week, but then when you get there your contract says 25. Or maybe the company's in a transition where they're making some changes and they're making a job offer here, but then they are planning on making a change to how they do finances or whatever later, and it feels like you've been here for 6 months but now the job's different. You should just verify, just check those things. So some of it could be just on their website, some of it could be talking to people who work there, some of it could be through the variety of other ways that you do that. But you really want to verify anything that's a real deal breaker for you, anything that really hits your values hard. You want to verify that those things are accurate. So let's talk about the hard questions. So in your handout, we're going to go back over to the handout here in a second. If you haven't grabbed the download yet, you can feel free to grab that from the website. And that link is in our chat, or you can type it in from here. We are going to talk through some of the scripts because some of these questions feel scary. I put up 3 categories: money, risk, and support. These are kind of the big areas where we want to be making sure that we understand what's happening with the job offer that we're given, and that those values really work for you, right? So on handout 2, you're going to see some questions. So questions like the cash flow question: do I get paid when the insurance company pays you, or do I get paid at regular intervals regardless of insurance reimbursement? Right? So if you only get paid when insurance get paid, you might work in October and not see that money till January. You need to ask yourself, can I pay my rent on that schedule? If so, great. This may work great out for you. If not, maybe you want to find a W-2 employer situation where you get paid more regularly, right? The admin time question: is there separate pay for administration time, like documentation or meetings, or is it rolled into the session rate? Knowing how you get paid for the totality of your job is really, really important, because there are 1,000 different ways that people do this out here. Some places pay a really nominal fee or rate for admin time. Some people pay the same as your clinical rate and it's all the same. Some people your salary, so it doesn't matter, but you're tracking those pieces. So it's all over the place. So you want to know, what's the details here? How does this work? And some companies will say, hey, I'm paying you enough in your clinical sessions that I don't make you track, and I don't do anything with the admin time. All of those things happen out there in the world, and you have to know what's going to work best for me in that, because you have to do the math, right? So if you spend 5 hours a week doing notes and you don't get paid for those 5 hours a week, then what your hourly rate is, even if it's $100 an hour, just dropped down to less than that, because you worked that 1 hour for $100, right? But then you worked 4 more hours. So really you're working 5 hours at $100, right? That's a problem. That's a much less big number for those 5 hours. And that's what, as a business owner, we do all the time, right? So as a business owner, we have to look at how much time does it take for us to do some of these smaller tasks, and do we want to farm them out to someone else? So for instance, a lot of us farm out our billing to someone else because it takes a long time to sit on the phone with Blue Cross Blue Shield and get information from them. And so if I can sit in a therapy session at $130 an hour for 5 hours, or I can sit on the phone talking to Blue Cross Blue Shield for no dollars for 5 hours, I would rather pay somebody $20 an hour to do that than to have me sitting there and not be able to make $130 per hour. If I can then be in those sessions doing $130 an hour, but I'm paying this person 20, I'm only losing $100. So that's only part of one session, and I still have 4 more, right? So you really have to do the math on how much money you're making or losing from these pieces, even as a W-2 employee. This isn't just about being a business owner. Even as a W-2 employee, you have to do that math. So then thinking about the cancellation question: do I get paid for late cancellations or no-shows? How does that work? Some practices will say, if we take a payment from a client, so if a client pays us our late cancellation no-show fee, you get paid. Some places will say, If you are doing work for the company, you get paid during that time. Some places will say like, nope, check out. If your client doesn't show up, get out, like you're not working today, right? So it really depends on each company and how that works. So you want to get really clear on that question too, because that impacts you. I would say that most practices, depending on the type of clientele, have anywhere between like a 2% to a 10% late cancellation no-show rate. So you would have to kind of do the math. And that's a great question to ask them too. What's your clientele's late cancellation and no-show? Because then that's going to tell you how much risk you're taking in whether or not you're doing whether or not you're getting paid for those hours, right? So like the metric question, is my pay based on the actual session pay or on the average session rate? Or is it just a flat hourly rate? Like what is this paid on? How did you do the math? Is what you're asking the boss. How did you do the math to figure this out? Which is a great question. And this is such a great question to find out about transparency. So when we go back to your values, if one of your values was transparency, then this is such a great question to ask, because it is really giving the opportunity for the employer to either share about how they set up the business and do those pieces or not. And that's up to them on how much they want to be transparent about those pieces. It's not a good thing or bad thing on either side if they do or don't, but if it's a value to you, then it might be something that you would want to know. So like at my practice, because I spend a lot of time launching people into their own practices, that's one of my favorite things to do, and teaching them about how to run a business, i.e. this course and all of these pieces, right? Like I love that stuff. If somebody asked me that question in mine, I'd be like, sweet, let's talk numbers. Like, let me pull up my spreadsheets and I'll show you all the little pieces and we'll get there. No, what I'm going to see in that is whether or not their eyes glaze over and they go, oh my gosh, I didn't want to know all of those things. Or if they go, interesting, I'm so interested in these pieces. So it gives us a great example of like finding the right fits, right? And being able to really talk through those pieces together well. The clawback question is such a great question. Imagine an insurance company audits the practice 2 years from now and decides that they were overpaid by $5,000. It's really important that you ask the interviewer, if a clawback happens, who pays that back, me or the practice, right? In a W-2 model, the employer usually takes that risk. In a 1099 model, you might owe that. And it's really important for you to know that piece of it. And another little like hot side piece to that might be even asking, how often do you get audited by insurance companies? How often do they do clawbacks? Have you ever gone through those experiences, and what were they like? I think that it's super important to know those pieces of like what goes on with this company, how often does this happen, and where is all this information kind of going, and what happens to me if that happens. So the clawback question is a quality question. Supervision question, is supervision provided internally or externally? Who pays for it? How do we choose who gets what? Those are all great questions, and I think it's super important that people get an opportunity to talk through those pieces and understand the value of what they're getting in that. The next part of that question that I would even ask is, if at some point I decide that I would like some specialized supervision or external supervision, is there any way to get some of that covered by the company, like paid for by the company, or is that something I would do on my own? And what are kind of the processes for that? So then you get to kind of see a value that might fit for you of like flexibility from that company, or maybe problem solving in some way, or all sorts of things. You get to kind of check it out in a lot of different angles, which is really fun. Okay, the marketing question, how are clients assigned? Do I find my own clients? Does the practice provide them? If they expect you to market yourself, but are only paying you a split of the income, you're really doing the business owner's job for an employee's wage. And that might be something that you would want to analyze with your values. So you might want to come to that and say like, if I'm doing more work, but not getting as much money, does that seem right? I will do a little like another little soapbox side note of saying this is kind of why I don't love that some practices have student interns market themselves on different marketplaces like Psychology Today or any of those places, because it really puts the onus of the practice who's supposed to be supplying the clients onto, I mean, the onus of the work of supplying the clients onto the clinician instead of the practice. And students need to be focusing on some other things. So we don't want to be having the students doing, like, number one, paying for that, but number two, doing all of that work, when the practice may be the one who's benefiting from that. So I have a little like nugget in there of like, oh, I hate it when I see that. But for employees or for 1099 contractors, that's a question you may have to ask yourself of how much you want to be in charge of that, or how much of that you have control over, in the context of the offer that they're making you. And then the last one is a culture question. Really asking about what are the company values? How long have they been in business? Get to know them in that way. The thing I always take a look at, like, what are the questions that the employer is asking you? Because typically those will be the areas where they have seen the most problems, right? So if they're asking questions about, like, how do you deal with conflict? Maybe there's been a lot of conflict in this company, or maybe they deal with high conflict clients, or maybe, they do a lot of, like, very aggressive in your face kind of um accountability, right? Maybe they're just like no nonsense. Who knows, right? Like, how do you deal with high conflict? That's a great question to tell me what's going on in your practice, right? If they're asking questions about, what do you do in ethical situations? Maybe this is a company that has had a lot of ethical situations, or maybe they're a company that's very risk averse, right? And they want to know, are you risk averse too? Maybe they'll ask you questions about, like, what are the things that you're studying right now? Because maybe one of their values is teaching or ethics, right? Like, who knows? But as you think about the company values and the culture, you don't want to just be asking, like, what kind of stuff do you do for fun? Although you should ask that too. But you want to think about take a flipped look at the questions that they're asking you, and know that some of those came from a place of either highlighting their values or highlighting their problems. And you can kind of ask some questions to read between the lines on those pieces. So let's talk about some spotting questionable offer things, right? So we're going to start on the right-hand column of the questionable pieces, and then we'll go to the left. On the right-hand column, you want to look for things that don't have a risky financial situation. So a W-2 job with a 70% commission would be risky. Why is that risky? You would look at that and be like, 70% commission? Yes. That looks great. And I'm a W-2? Yes. The reason that this is problematic is because we have to ask the question of, like, what's going on with their math, right? So after they pay their taxes and overhead, there's almost no money left for benefits or support for you. So high percentages in W-2 often mean low benefits for you and potentially low stability or zero support. Like, you end up doing a lot of things yourself. Now, if one of your values is independence with some safeguards, maybe this would be okay. It would be a red flag for me, because I would truly be wondering, like, how much of the boss's job am I doing here? Or are they going to go in a year and figure out, like, crap, we cannot afford this forever. We've got to drop down rates. We got to go with hourly. We got to go do something else, right? Like, I would be looking at this and going, I don't know. But if I was somebody who was really independent thinker and doing all those pieces, but really just, didn't have to, didn't knew that they weren't going to have to worry about some of the other pieces, could be okay. Again, it comes back down to your values. The next one is when they call you a contractor, but you have very limited autonomy. So maybe a 1099 contractor job that had specific hours or mandatory meetings or free supervision. Any of those things would be a hot questionable offer for me. I would look at that and be like, wait a second, you want a 1099 contractor to work between these two time slots. So I have zero control over my schedule. That seems a problem. Or if they say, you have all control over your schedule except for you have to be at our Wednesday meeting. That's not really a 1099 contractor. I get control over my whole thing. Or if they say you get free supervision with our 1099 contract, that's a benefit that comes with being an employee. That is not a 1099 contractor. It may seem like it's beneficial to you. You may think, great, I don't have to do this, but it crosses the line into that definition of independent contractor, you're no longer being treated like an independent contractor because you're giving them a benefit, right? And that's that place where we want to be really clear of, are they treating you like an employee or are they treating you like a contractor? Contractors, you get to do the job your way. Now you may agree to some things, right? Like with us as being independent contractors with insurance companies, we agree to the contract that we put together. That contract says we have to do things in a certain way, and that's an agreement we come into willingly to do that part. But there are some pieces of this where they're almost like, some of these job offers are trying to like, they're trying to show you that you having independence and getting this high dollar is really a benefit to you, but they still want you to do it their way. And that's where like that fuzzy line is. They're having no risk and you're taking all the risk, and that becomes, to me, the problematic space of not being in the right classification. And then the last questionable offer piece that's really generic. They don't define anything. They seem afraid to give you details or not transparent. Those are questionable offers. I think if they say like, oh, you'll see all of that when you go through onboarding. Take a step back. No, I'd like to see some of that now. Like, I don't know that I need to accept this offer at this point without knowing more, right? Inside of the great pieces, right? If the way that you would know that this is a great offer or a great company, these are some of the values that I think are important. Obviously, you can come up with your own list of things too, but transparency, if they are willing to share the average session rate with you, if they're talking to you about money, if they're showing you some of the details, like they don't need to show you every little piece of their books by any means, but they shouldn't be afraid to talk to you about like, yeah, what's our average session rate, or how much do people cancel, or those pieces, because that shouldn't be new information for them. That should be very easy to come up with information, especially for a savvy interviewee, right? Communication, if they follow up when you ask them to send you the job description after the interview or answer whatever question, that's a great value of a company to kind of bring forward, in my opinion. Obviously, your values can be different. Community, if community is your value, if they offer for you to meet the team before you sign the dotted line, or if they can connect you with some other people that have worked there, that can be a great avenue to see that your communication value is being met. And then, of course, accessibility. If they discuss work accommodations that are available to everyone in the practice in the interview, that really, opens wide the space of like understanding who people are, how they work, and how they function within the practice space. So, a good employer will talk to you and share with you their stuff. A questionable employer offer might make things seem too good to be true. Might make things seem like that they've got all this handled and you don't need to worry about a thing. Having some good conversation and transparency, I think, is kind of a universal value, but you figure out your values. All right, so we are close to the end of our stuff today. So I'm going to go over a couple of FAQs, and I'll send any of the other ones that were in the chat to everybody once we go through the signups and things. So first of all, the first question that we get regularly is, well, if I'm going to run my own company anyway, why can't I be a 1099 with another company? I mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to re-mention it here, that your being your own company is nothing to do with being a 1099 or a W-2 employee. You can be a 1099 and do those. You can be your own company, but it depends on your licensure status. It depends on the company and how they're hiring you on whether or not you can be a 1099 with another company. So you'll want to take a look at how you set up your business, and you'll want to take a look at whether or not your licensure status will allow you to be a 1099. If you end up running into this question and thinking like, I think I can, but I'm not sure, shoot me an email. Happy to answer that for you and happy to work through that with you. The second question is, do you have any tips on getting started with my own business if I want to pursue being a 1099 or just running my own practice? Yes, I have so many tips. I have a full course that you can go and buy on my website at drtarasanderson.co. and happy to kind of do that live or on video. If I'm not running a live course, when you look at it, please shoot me an email. I'm happy to get one started for you. I also do one-on-one consultation for that piece. Or if you just shoot me an email and just say like, hey, I have this specific question and I was in your comparing job offers class, like happy to just answer you by email. Super happy to get people started. I love talking all things business. Where can I get the handouts? That link is on here. It's also in the chat, and I will send it out afterwards to everybody who registered for this. And then lastly, if I have questions about offers I'm receiving, can I email you? Yes, I would be more than happy. Even if you want to remove information about who they were from, if you fill out those compensation comparison charts and want to just send them to me and say like, am I doing this right? Or does this make sense? Or what other information do I need? Happy to support you. I don't even need to know what companies they are. I'm just happy to talk to you about what it is that you're looking for. So feel free to send that my way if you would like. If you have any other questions, please feel free to either drop them in the chat or shoot me an email, and I'm happy to get all of this information out. All right, wrapping up, your next steps. Define your values. You need to get really, really clear on your values and what it is that you want out of these job offers. The next step is you're going to do the math every time you go to one of those pieces, or just even look online as you're looking at the benefits and things that are offered on people's websites. Do the math, fill out that worksheet, compare the offers. And then the last one is ask the hard questions. So come up with your list of questions and really talk them through with people. All right. So for those of you who are watching this in 2025, we do have an upcoming job fair. And if you are looking for work in Oregon in April, we have a job fair from the Oregon Group Practice Association on April 3rd, 2026. That is a Friday. And if you get the emails after this session, I will have a link in there for you to go and get all the information and get a heads up when that is coming. If you're not and you just would like for me to tell you about it when it comes up, you can go ahead and shoot me an email, and I'm more than happy to send that your way. All right. Thank you, everybody, so much for attending. You can find out more information about me or any of the courses and things I teach on drtarasanderson.co. And I am so glad that you are here today. And I can't wait to hear from all of you about how you are doing in your job journeys. And reach out anytime. Happy to talk.